Night is when fear speaks the loudest. When the world grows quiet, the mind begins its rehearsals, old worries, imagined futures, unanswered questions. You may lie still, yet inside everything feels restless. That restlessness is not weakness. It is the soul asking for release. Fear does not always arrive as panic. Often it comes as vigilance, as planning, as the need to stay alert so nothing goes wrong. But vigilance is exhausting, and the body was never meant to guard the universe through the night. There is a reason fear tightens its grip when you are tired. Fatigue lowers resistance, and when resistance is low, old patterns surface. Yet night also holds a secret. What you release before sleep does not follow you into tomorrow. You were never meant to carry your fears into rest. Sleep was designed as restoration, not continuation. A place where burdens are laid down and guidance moves quietly without effort. Most people try to conquer fear by thinking harder, by reasoning, distracting, or bracing themselves. But fear does not dissolve through struggle. It dissolves through transfer. There is a way to hand something over so completely that it cannot return. A way to let go without anxiety creeping back in the moment you close your eyes. It is simple, but it must be done correctly. Fear survives on ownership. As long as you believe it is yours to manage, it stays. The moment you release responsibility for outcomes, fear loses its function. You may have been taught that letting go is dangerous, that if you stop worrying, something will slip through the cracks. Yet worry has never prevented disaster. It has only rehearsed it. Protection does not come from vigilance. It comes from alignment. And alignment begins when you stop guarding the door and allow something greater to stand watch. There is an inner act that can be done tonight quietly, without effort, that signals safety at the deepest level. When that signal is sent, the nervous system softens, the mind loosens its grip, sleep becomes a sanctuary again. Fear cannot remain where trust has been placed deliberately. It fades, not because it is fought, but because it is no longer needed. Many people pray while still holding on. They ask for protection while secretly preparing for harm. Two commands cancel each other, and life responds to the stronger one. The act you are about to learn is not pleading. It is permission. Permission for protection to take over where effort has failed. You may notice how fear insists on timing. What if it happens tonight? What if I miss something? What if I'm not prepared? These questions are traps. Preparedness is not the same as peace. True safety does not come from constant awareness. It comes from trust so complete that the mind can finally rest. There is a reason children sleep deeply when they feel protected. Their safety is not logical, it is felt. And that feeling invites rest. You can return to that state, not by pretending fear isn't there, but by placing it somewhere it no longer belongs. Tonight is not about fixing anything. It is about releasing, and release creates space. Space allows order to move. When you let go correctly, you do not become careless. You become aligned. And alignment is the strongest form of protection there is. Fear shrinks when it is no longer fed attention. When the mind stops checking, scanning, and rehearsing. This is not avoidance, it is wisdom. There is a difference between ignoring fear and dissolving it. Ignoring leaves it waiting. Dissolving leaves nothing behind. You do not need to understand every outcome before sleeping. You do not need to solve tomorrow tonight. Sleep is not a planning session. It is a reset. The moment you release fear, something subtle shifts. The body exhales. The shoulders drop. The heart rate slows. These are not physical accidents. They are signals of safety returning. Protection does not announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly when invited. You may think fear keeps you safe, But fear only keeps you awake. Trust is what allows rest, and rest restores clarity. When you wake without fear, decisions come easier. Strength returns. Solutions appear without strain. Fear clouds direction. Release clears it. This is why letting go at night changes the day. Because what you carry into sleep becomes the tone of tomorrow. Tonight offers you a clean slate, not because circumstances change, but because ownership changes. What you stop holding cannot weigh you down. The practice you are about to hear is not dramatic. It is calm. It works because it does not argue with fear, it removes its assignment. Once fear is released, protection steps in naturally, not as force, but as presence. You are not required to guard yourself endlessly. You were never meant to live in constant anticipation of harm. There is something deeply restful waiting for you on the other side of letting go, a stillness that does not feel empty but held. Stay with this message tonight. Not to learn something complicated, but to remember something simple. Because when fear is released before sleep, the night becomes safe again. And when the night is safe, so is the path ahead. I would like to speak first of the night, for the night has been much misunderstood. Many believe that fear comes at night because they are weak, or because something is wrong with them. Yet the night does not create fear. It merely reveals what has been carried through the day without rest. When the outer world grows quiet, the inner world is heard more clearly. This is not punishment. It is opportunity. During the day, the mind is occupied with duties, conversations, and movement. Thought is directed outward, and fear is often held at bay by activity. But when the body grows still, the mind turns inward, and whatever has been restrained begins to rise. This is why the night seems louder to the fearful mind. It is not louder, it is simply no longer drowned out. There is no shame in this. Fear appearing at night does not mean faith has failed. It means vigilance has been exhausted. The soul was never meant to remain on guard without pause. The body cannot protect the future, and the mind cannot supervise the universe. Night arrives as a reminder that effort must end somewhere. Sleep was designed as restoration, not continuation. It is the appointed hour when burdens are laid down and authority is transferred. Yet many carry their anxieties into sleep, as though sleep were merely a darker extension of the day. They close their eyes, but do not release their grip, and so the mind continues its rehearsals while the body longs for rest. I have observed that fear rarely arrives as terror at night. More often it arrives as planning, as reviewing, as the quiet insistence that one must remain alert so that nothing goes wrong. This vigilance feels responsible, even necessary. Yet it is this very vigilance that exhausts the soul. Fear tightens its grip when the body is tired because fatigue weakens resistance. Old patterns emerge when strength wanes. But fatigue also opens a door if one knows how to use it. For when resistance is low, release becomes possible. The same condition that allows fear to surface allows peace to enter. Most people attempt to conquer fear by thinking harder. They reason, distract themselves, or brace for endurance. Yet fear does not dissolve through effort. It dissolves through transfer. As long as man believes fear is his responsibility to manage, it remains. The moment responsibility is released, fear loses its purpose. Fear survives on ownership. It whispers, "This is your problem. This is your duty to watch. This is yours to fix." As long as man accepts this assignment, fear remains active. But when the assignment is returned to divine intelligence, fear retires naturally. Night is the perfect hour for this return. It was designed for surrender. The body lies down not in defeat, but in trust. It rests because it expects to be sustained. When fear interferes with this process, it is not because danger is present, but because trust has not yet been placed deliberately. I have known many who dreaded the night. They feared the quiet, the stillness, the absence of distraction. Yet when they learned that night was not asking them to solve anything, but to release everything, their fear softened. They said, "I thought I had to stay alert." In truth, alertness had become the burden. You were never meant to carry your fears into rest. Sleep is not a planning session. It is not a rehearsal for tomorrow's troubles. It is a sanctuary, a place where burdens are laid down and guidance moves without effort. What you carry into sleep becomes the tone of tomorrow. This is a law few understand. The subconscious receives its strongest impressions just before sleep. If fear is held at that hour, it is impressed deeply. If trust is placed, it is impressed instead. The night listens carefully. This is why release before sleep is so powerful. When fear is surrendered at night, it does not follow you into the morning. The day awakens differently. Decisions feel simpler. Strength returns. The mind is clearer. This change is not imagined. It is lawful. Others notice this difference quickly. They say you seem calmer, more composed, less reactive. You have not changed circumstances yet, but you have changed tone, and tone governs response. I once knew a woman who had feared the night for years. She lay awake, reviewing conversations, anticipating losses, guarding against imagined harm. She believed this vigilance protected her. When she learned to say each night, "I rest in divine protection," and truly meant it, her nights changed. Sleep returned, and soon, the situations she feared either resolved or lost their power over her. The body knows when it is safe. Safety is not created by thought alone, but by feeling. When trust is placed deliberately, the nervous system responds. Shoulders drop, breath deepens, the heart slows. These are not physical accidents. They are signals that responsibility has been transferred. Protection does not come from vigilance. It comes from alignment. Alignment begins when man stops guarding the door and allows something greater to stand watch. Divine intelligence does not sleep. It does not tire. It does not forget. Yet many attempt to replace it with their own anxious attention. This is why fear feels strongest when one is tired. The mind has been trying to do a work it was never meant to do. Night arrives to say, enough, enough thinking, enough guarding, enough carrying. Fear also insists upon timing. What if it happens tonight? What if I miss something? These questions are traps. Preparedness is not peace. Peace is preparedness at a higher level. Children sleep deeply when they feel protected. Their safety is not logical. It is felt. They do not understand the world, yet they rest. That rest is trust in its purest form. Adults are not meant to lose this capacity. They are meant to restore it consciously. You can return to that state, not by denying fear, but by placing it somewhere it no longer belongs. Fear dissolves not through argument, but through reassignment. Tonight is not about fixing anything. It is about releasing. Release creates space. Space allows order to move. Order does not need instruction. It needs permission. When fear is released correctly, it does not return the moment the eyes close. It cannot. It has been removed from duty, and something else takes its place. Quiet presence, watchfulness, without strain. Many pray while still holding on. They ask for protection while secretly preparing for harm. Two commands cancel each other. Life responds to the stronger one. The stronger command is always the one felt most deeply. What you are learning is not pleading. It is permission. permission for protection to take over where effort has failed, permission for rest to replace vigilance. You are not required to understand every outcome before sleeping. You are not meant to solve tomorrow tonight. Sleep restores clarity. It does not demand it. When fear is released before sleep, the night becomes safe again. And when the night is safe, the path ahead begins to soften as well. This understanding prepares the way for the next truth that fear has survived only because vigilance was mistaken for responsibility, and that when vigilance is surrendered, protection steps in without delay. Having seen that fear grows loud at night because vigilance has been mistaken for responsibility, we are now ready to look more closely at this error, for it is one of the most persistent illusions of the human mind. Many believe that worry is a form of care, that vigilance proves love, and that staying alert keeps danger at bay. Yet vigilance born of fear has never protected anyone. It has only exhausted the watcher. The body was never meant to guard the universe. The mind was never designed to stand sentry over the future. These tasks belong to divine intelligence alone. When man attempts to assume them, he strains against his own nature, and strain always produces unrest. Nighttime vigilance is especially deceptive because it feels quiet and serious. The world sleeps, and the mind believes it must remain awake, just in case. Yet this watchfulness is not strength, it is mistrust. It assumes that order will fail unless constantly supervised. This assumption, repeated night after night, trains the subconscious to expect danger. I have known people who believed their worry kept them prepared. They said, "If I stop worrying, something will slip through the cracks." Yet nothing ever slipped through the cracks when they slept. Life continued. The sun rose. Events unfolded without their supervision. Their vigilance had been unnecessary. Worry gives the illusion of control, but control is not safety. Control is tension. Safety is alignment. Alignment rests because it knows it is supported. When a man lies awake rehearsing possible outcomes, he believes he is being responsible. In truth, he is issuing instructions to the subconscious. The subconscious does not reason. It obeys. It accepts the picture presented and begins arranging experience to match it. This is why worry at night is especially powerful. The subconscious is receptive. It is open. It records impressions without question. Whatever is held at that hour is planted deeply. Many attempt to counter this by distraction, reading, counting, or forcing sleep. Yet distraction does not release ownership. Fear remains waiting beneath the surface. True release requires transfer. Protection cannot operate while fear insists on control. Two authorities cannot govern the same space. Either divine intelligence stands watch, or the anxious mind does. One must step aside. I once knew a man who feared losing his livelihood. Each night, he lay awake reviewing accounts, anticipating disaster, and planning defenses. He believed this vigilance kept him safe. When he finally learned to say, "Divine intelligence manages my affairs," and meant it, his nights grew quiet. Not long afterward, opportunities appeared that had been invisible before. His fear had been blinding him. The mind that guards through fear cannot see clearly. Vision narrows. Possibility shrinks. Trust restores sight. Vigilance also tightens the body. Muscles remain tense. Breath becomes shallow. The heart stays alert. This constant readiness prevents restoration. The body cannot heal while it is braced. Sleep was designed as renewal. It repairs what effort has worn. It restores what vigilance has strained. When fear interrupts this process, fatigue accumulates, and fear grows stronger the next night. Thus a cycle is formed which many mistake for fate. Yet this cycle can be broken instantly when the false belief behind vigilance is removed. The belief is this: if I do not watch, harm will come. This belief must be replaced with truth. Truth says, divine intelligence watches for me. Truth says, I am safe when I rest. Truth says, protection does not require my strain. When these truths are spoken deliberately before sleep, the subconscious receives new instruction. It relaxes its guard. The nervous system responds. Peace follows naturally. I have observed that those who release vigilance before sleep awaken with clearer minds. Decisions that felt heavy the night before feel simple in the morning. This is not coincidence. The mind has been allowed to reset. Others notice this change as well. They say you seem steadier, less reactive, more confident. You have not become careless. You have become aligned. There is a great dignity in rest. The one who rests in trust carries quiet authority. He does not rush. He does not apologize for pausing. Others sense this assurance and respond with respect. Vigilance also keeps fear alive by repetition. Each night the same concerns are reviewed, the same dangers imagined. Repetition impresses the subconscious deeply. To remove fear, repetition must be redirected. This is why affirmations spoken at night are so powerful. The mind is receptive. The old pattern can be replaced with a new one quickly. These statements are especially helpful at bedtime. Divine intelligence stands watch for me. I release all vigilance now. I rest in perfect safety. They should be spoken quietly, without strain. The feeling is more important than the volume. When relief is felt, the transfer has been made. Many ask, what if I forget something important? This fear reveals the depth of mistrust. Divine intelligence does not forget. It does not overlook details. It governs with perfect memory and exactness. You do not become careless by trusting. You become precise. Precision belongs to law, not to anxiety. I once knew a woman who feared that if she stopped worrying about her children, something terrible would happen. Her worry did not protect them. It only exhausted her. When she learned to place them consciously in divine care each night, her fear diminished. Her children thrived. Protection had replaced vigilance. This act of placing is not imagination. It is recognition of law. What is recognized becomes operative. Night offers the perfect opportunity to practice this law because the body is already surrendering. One need only allow the mind to follow. You may notice resistance at first. The mind may protest, saying, I cannot just stop worrying. Replacement is the method of law. Say simply, I am not required to watch. Say, divine love watches for me. Say it until the mind softens. Softening is the sign that vigilance has been released. The moment vigilance steps aside, protection takes its place. This prepares the way for the next and most important understanding, that when fear is released through transfer, divine protection becomes active, without delay, and the night becomes a sanctuary instead of a battleground. For fear cannot remain where responsibility has been rightly placed. We now come to the central act which makes release complete. For fear does not depart merely because one wishes it gone. Fear departs when responsibility is consciously transferred. Until that transfer is made, fear believes it still has a task to perform. Once the task is removed, fear has no function and quietly dissolves. This act of transfer has been called by many names in Scripture, yet it is always the same in principle. It is called casting the burden, committing the way, laying down the load, or yielding the care. These words were never meant to be poetic comforts. They were exact instructions for the release of strain. Fear remains active as long as man believes, this is mine to manage. It may be called duty, foresight, or responsibility, but the belief beneath it is the same. When man believes outcomes depend upon his vigilance, fear must remain awake. When that belief is removed, fear retires naturally. Casting the burden is not imagining that problems vanish. It is acknowledging that their management belongs to divine intelligence, not to personal effort. This distinction is vital. Many attempt to release fear while still secretly planning to resume control in the morning. Such release is incomplete. True casting is final. It says inwardly, I no longer carry this, not temporarily, not conditionally, completely. I have often observed that partial release produces partial peace. The mind relaxes briefly, then tightens again. These signs indicate that transfer has been accepted. I once knew a woman who feared for her future constantly. Each night she lay awake, rehearsing possibilities. When she learned to cast the burden deliberately, she said, I felt as though something heavy was lifted from my chest. That sensation was not imagined. It was the body recognizing that vigilance was no longer required. The correct method of casting the burden is simple, yet it must be done with authority. One must not plead. One must not beg. One must not reason. One must decide. This statement, spoken quietly and with finality, is sufficient. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. When spoken sincerely, it accomplishes transfer instantly. It is not the words alone, but the decision beneath them which produces effect. The subconscious obeys decision without question. Some fear that if they cast the burden, nothing will be done. This fear misunderstands divine law. Divine intelligence is never idle. It operates continuously, without fatigue or forgetfulness. When man interferes less, it operates more. Casting the burden does not mean forgetting responsibility. It means assigning it correctly. Responsibility belongs to law, not to anxiety. I have seen people attempt to solve problems for years without success, only to see them resolve quickly once the burden was released. The law had been waiting patiently for interference to end. The night is the appointed hour for this act, because the body is already yielding. Sleep requires surrender. When the mind resists surrender, fear remains. When the mind joins the body in release, peace follows. It is important to understand that casting the burden is not an emotional act. It does not require feeling calm beforehand. Calm follows casting. It does not precede it. One must cast first and allow peace to arrive. Many wait to feel safe before releasing fear. This reverses the law. Safety is the result of release, not its prerequisite. I often say that fear is like a guard who continues pacing because no one has told him his shift has ended. Casting the burden tells fear, your service is no longer required, and fear departs without argument. The law responds to clarity. Vague wishes produce vague results. Clear decisions produce immediate change. This is why casting must be deliberate. One must know what is being released. Name it inwardly if necessary, then release it entirely. For example, I cast this fear of the future on the Christ within. I cast this concern for my family on divine love. I cast this burden of responsibility on divine intelligence. Then one must refuse to retrieve the burden. Retrieval reactivates fear. The mind may attempt to return to vigilance out of habit. When it does, the act must be repeated. Repetition is not failure. It is discipline. Habit dissolves through replacement. I have known people who needed to cast the burden several times in one evening. Each time they did, relief deepened. Eventually, fear lost its hold entirely. Casting the burden also prepares the way for guidance. As long as fear holds the reins, guidance cannot be heard. When fear steps aside, Intuition speaks quietly. I once knew a man who could not sleep because of an important decision. Each night he reviewed possibilities endlessly. When he cast the burden and slept, he awoke with clarity. The answer appeared without effort. The night had done its work. This is why Scripture says that answers come in the night. They do not come because the mind is busy, but because it is finally at rest. Casting the burden before sleep allows divine mind to arrange, adjust, and prepare without interference. Man does not need to supervise this process. He need only permit it. The subconscious is deeply impressionable at night. When fear is released at that hour, it is replaced by trust automatically. The next day carries a different tone. Others notice this change immediately. The one who has slept without fear moves differently. He speaks with assurance. He is less reactive. Confidence returns naturally. This confidence is not bravado. It is alignment. And alignment produces authority without effort. I often advise making casting the burden a nightly practice. Whether fear is felt or not, practice establishes habit. Habit produces stability. These affirmations are especially effective before sleep. I release all care now. I am divinely protected. All things are working together for my good. Speak them slowly. Allow each to register. The feeling of relief indicates success. Fear cannot survive where trust has been placed deliberately. It fades because it is no longer needed. This understanding prepares the way for the next truth, that once fear is released through casting, divine protection steps in automatically, and the night becomes guarded without vigilance. For protection is not something man must create. It is something he must allow. When the burden has been truly cast and fear has been released from duty, something remarkable takes place without effort or announcement. Protection steps in, not because it was summoned urgently, but because it was finally permitted to operate without interference. Divine protection does not arrive as force or alarm. It settles as presence. Many imagine protection as something dramatic, an intervention, a barrier, a sudden rescue. Yet protection, as understood in divine law, is far quieter. It is the absence of disturbance. It is the calm continuity of order. It is the assurance that nothing is required of the anxious mind. As long as man insists on guarding himself, protection remains in the background. The moment personal vigilance steps aside, divine intelligence assumes command naturally, without struggle. I have observed that people often say, "I do not feel protected," when in truth, they have not relinquished control. Protection cannot be felt, while fear insists on supervising. Feeling protected is the sign that release has been complete. When protection takes over, the nervous system responds immediately. The body relaxes because it senses that responsibility has shifted. Breath deepens. The heart rate slows. Sleep becomes heavier and more restoring. These are not physical accidents. They are signals of alignment. Protection does not require constant attention. It does not weaken when unnoticed. Divine intelligence does not sleep, tire, or forget. It does not require reminders. Man, however, often attempts to replace it with his own anxious monitoring. Night offers the clearest opportunity to experience this law because the body is already yielding. When the mind follows the body into surrender, protection becomes tangible. I once knew a man who feared that something terrible would happen if he slept deeply. He believed he must remain half awake to be safe. When he learned to place himself deliberately in divine care each night, his fear diminished. Nothing he feared occurred. Life continued in order. His vigilance had been unnecessary. Protection operates best where trust is complete. Partial trust invites partial peace. Complete trust invites rest. Scripture often speaks of angels keeping watch through the night. This imagery was not meant to inspire fantasy, but assurance. It symbolized the truth that protection operates independently of human effort. I have known people who woke from nights of true release, feeling as though they had been watched over. They could not explain it, but they felt safe. That feeling was not imagination, it was recognition. Protection also extends to thought. When fear is released, the mind no longer generates alarming images during the night. Dreams soften. The subconscious rests. What enters the mind is filtered by peace. This is why those who practice nightly release often report fewer troubling dreams. The mind no longer rehearses danger. It rests in safety. Protection does not prevent experience. It governs experience. It ensures that nothing enters one's life without purpose or order. This assurance removes the need for vigilance entirely. I often advise speaking this statement before sleep. I am divinely protected now and always. When spoken with acceptance rather than pleading, it establishes peace quickly. The subconscious responds to certainty, not urgency. Another helpful affirmation is, divine love surrounds me. Therefore, I fear nothing. Love, rightly understood, is not emotion. It is law in operation. Where love governs, fear cannot remain. Protection also prepares the way for healing. The body cannot heal while it is braced for danger. When protection is felt, restoration begins. Many ailments soften simply because the body has been allowed to rest without fear. I have seen people whose sleeplessness resolved when they stopped monitoring themselves at night. They said, I no longer feel I must stay awake. Their trust restored their rest. Others notice the effect of protected rest the next day. The one who has slept without fear moves more deliberately. He reacts less. He is steadier. People feel safe in his presence. Authority grows quietly. Protection also influences decision-making. When fear is absent, decisions are not rushed. Guidance becomes clear. The mind is no longer cluttered with imagined danger. I have known people who solved long-standing problems after a single night of true rest. They awoke with insight. Divine mind had been free to arrange and reveal. This is why Scripture speaks of answers coming in the night. They do not come because the mind is busy, but because it has finally ceased interference. Protection does not shout when it works. It leaves no evidence except peace. Yet peace is the greatest evidence of all. Some fear that trusting protection will make them careless. Yet carelessness arises from distraction, not from trust. Trust sharpens awareness. Fear scatters it. The protected mind is alert without strain. It notices what matters and ignores what does not. This clarity replaces vigilance with wisdom. Protection also governs the home. When fear is released at night, the atmosphere softens. Children sleep more deeply. Relationships feel calmer. The house rests. I once knew a family who struggled with nightly tension. When the parents began releasing fear before sleep, the entire household changed. Noise diminished. Rest increased. Harmony returned. This illustrates a vital truth. Fear does not belong to one person alone. It affects the environment. Release does the same. Night is not a dangerous hour. It is a sacred one. It is the appointed time when man may lay down his armor and be restored. When protection is allowed to stand watch, night becomes a sanctuary rather than a battleground. The soul rests knowing it is held. This understanding prepares the way for the next truth that sleep itself is not merely rest, but reordering, and that when fear is released, the night quietly prepares the answers of the day to come. For what is surrendered at night is often resolved by morning, without effort or awareness of the process. When fear has been released and protection has taken its rightful place, sleep resumes its true office. Sleep is not merely the absence of waking. It is not a blank interval between one day and the next. Sleep is an active state of restoration in which divine mind reorders what effort has confused and repairs what strain has disturbed. When fear is absent, this work proceeds unhindered. Many do not realize that the night continues the work of the day at a deeper level. The conscious mind rests, but the subconscious remains receptive. Whatever impression is left there before sleep becomes the mold into which experience is poured. This is why the act of release before sleep is so powerful. It determines the tone of what is being prepared. I have often observed that people say, "I will think about it in the morning," yet the morning brings clarity without thought. They are surprised by answers that seem to have arrived of their own accord. In truth, the night has done its work. Divine mind has arranged, adjusted, and revealed while the mind was at rest. When fear is carried into sleep, the night cannot perform this work cleanly. The subconscious is occupied with alarm. It continues rehearsing danger. Restoration is delayed. But when fear is laid down, the night becomes a workshop of order. I once knew a woman who went to bed each night burdened by decisions. She believed that if she did not think constantly, she would choose wrongly. When she learned to release these decisions before sleep and say, "Divine wisdom now directs," she awoke with answers she had not reasoned out. Her nights became productive instead of restless. Sleep under trust is deeply renewing. The body repairs itself more efficiently. The nerves soften. The mind resets. This is why those who sleep without fear often awaken with greater strength and clarity than those who sleep longer under strain. You may notice that after a night of true release, problems that seemed large feel smaller. This is not because they have disappeared, but because fear has been removed from them. Without fear, they no longer appear threatening. Solutions become visible. This change in perception is one of the greatest gifts of restful sleep. Fear magnifies difficulty. Rest reduces it to proper size. I have often said that divine mind works fastest when man is not interfering. Sleep removes interference naturally, if fear has been released beforehand. One does not need to instruct divine mind. One must simply allow it. The night also prepares guidance. Many receive intuitive direction upon waking, not because they sought it, but because they stopped blocking it. Guidance flows most freely into a rested mind. I have known people who kept a notebook by the bed because they awoke with ideas, directions, or solutions. Reception is the fruit of release. Sleep also restores faith. When the mind has rested without fear, trust feels natural again. Doubt loses its edge. The soul remembers its alignment. This is why fear often feels less convincing in the morning unless it is immediately reintroduced. What was released at night must be guarded against retrieval by morning habits. I often advise rising without haste. The first moments of waking are important. If fear is immediately reclaimed, the night's work is undone. If trust is reaffirmed, the work is sealed. This affirmation is especially helpful upon waking. I thank thee that all things are working together for my good. Gratitude seals restoration. It acknowledges order already in motion. Others will notice the difference in one who has slept in peace. He does not rush. He does not react sharply. He moves with assurance. This calm is felt immediately by those around him. Calm carries authority. It reassures others. It inspires confidence. Employers trust it. Families depend upon it. Life responds favorably to it. I have observed that many promotions, reconciliations, and improvements follow periods of restful nights. These outer changes are not caused by sleep alone, but by the trust that made sleep possible. Sleep under fear is shallow. Sleep under trust is deep. Depth produces renewal. Night also dissolves resentment when fear is absent. Old grievances lose their charge. Forgiveness becomes easier. The heart softens naturally. I once knew a man who could not forgive a wrong. He rehearsed it nightly. When he learned to release the burden before sleep, the resentment weakened. Within days, forgiveness came without effort. Sleep had dissolved what effort could not. This illustrates a vital law. What effort fails to change, rest often resolves. Divine mind works where man ceases working. The night is also a time when faith is impressed deeply. Affirmations spoken before sleep reach the subconscious without resistance. This is why repetition at night is especially effective. These statements are powerful when spoken quietly before rest. I sleep in peace and wake in joy. My affairs are in divine order. I rest, and divine mind works. Speak them without urgency. Allow their meaning to settle. The feeling of relief indicates acceptance. Do not attempt to force sleep. Forcing is another form of vigilance. Release invites rest naturally. If sleep does not come immediately, remain in trust. Do not monitor the clock. Monitoring reactivates fear. Trust continues the work whether sleep arrives quickly or slowly. Even lying quietly in trust restores more than restless sleep under fear. Night also prepares the way for prosperity. Many fear lack most intensely at night. They calculate, worry, and rehearse shortage. This rehearsal imprints scarcity. When fear of lack is released before sleep, supply begins arranging itself. Opportunities appear. Unexpected channels open. The next day brings movement. I have known people who received unexpected assistance after nights of true release. They said, I stopped worrying about it. That stopping was the turning point. Sleep under trust also restores health. Fear constricts circulation and vitality. Rest under protection allows flow. Many symptoms soften simply because the body has been allowed to relax. I have seen people recover strength after nights of peace when effort had failed. This is not mystery. It is law. The night was never meant to be endured. It was meant to heal. When fear is released before sleep, the night becomes a partner rather than an adversary. It works with you instead of against you. You may notice that you awaken with a sense of quiet readiness, not urgency, readiness. This is the correct state for action. Action taken from readiness is effective. This understanding prepares the way for the final discipline, the guarding of the mind at night so that fear does not return, and the establishment of peace as a habit rather than an event. For peace practiced nightly becomes permanent, and fear loses its foothold entirely. When peace has been tasted through release, and restful sleep has begun to restore the soul, there arises a new responsibility, not the old burdened vigilance, but the gentle discipline of guarding the mind. This guarding is not anxious watchfulness. It is the calm authority of one who knows what may enter and what must remain outside. I have often spoken of the watchman at the gate of consciousness. This watchman is not fearful. He does not pace or peer into darkness. He simply stands and permits only what is harmonious to pass. Fear cannot return where it is not admitted. Many believe that fear disappears once and for all in a single act. Yet fear is a habit formed by repetition, and habits yield through replacement. Each night becomes an opportunity to strengthen peace until peace feels natural and fear feels foreign. The watchman's work is simple. When an anxious thought attempts to enter, it is quietly denied admittance. No argument is made. Argument engages fear. Replacement dissolves it. One may say inwardly, This thought has no authority, or simply, I am at peace. These statements do not push fear away. They remove its permission to remain. I have known people who struggled because they wrestled with fearful thoughts, believing they must defeat them. Yet fear is not an enemy to be conquered. It is a misunderstanding to be corrected. Correction requires clarity, not combat. Night is the most important hour for this discipline because the mind is receptive. Whatever is admitted before sleep tends to remain through the night. Therefore, the watchman must be especially attentive at this hour. This does not mean strain. It means decision. Decision is effortless when truth is understood. I often advise setting a definite intention before sleep. Nothing enters my mind tonight but peace. This statement establishes authority. Authority produces order. When fear attempts to intrude after this decision, it feels weaker. It no longer has the weight of belief behind it. It may appear briefly, but it cannot stay. The watchman does not scold fear. He does not analyze it. He simply does not engage. Engagement feeds fear. Disengagement starves it. Repetition of this practice establishes a habit of peace. Each night, fear loses ground. Each night, trust strengthens. Eventually, fear ceases to knock. I have seen people whose nights were once filled with anxiety become deeply restful simply through this practice. They said, "The thoughts still tried to come, but they no longer frightened me." This is the sign of mastery. Mastery is not the absence of challenge, but the absence of fear in the presence of challenge. The watchman also guards speech. Words spoken at night carry weight. Complaints, regrets, and worries spoken aloud impress the subconscious deeply. Therefore, speech before sleep must be chosen carefully. I often recommend silence at bedtime. Silence allows peace to settle. If words are spoken, let them be words of trust. These affirmations are especially effective. I am safe. All is well. I rest in divine order. Speak them gently. Let their meaning sink below thought. The watchman also guards imagination. Fearful images must not be entertained. Images are powerful messengers to the subconscious. Replace images of danger with images of rest and safety. Imagine yourself lying in calm light. Imagine the day ending gently. Imagination, rightly directed, is a servant of peace. I once knew a woman who replaced fearful images at night with the simple picture of herself sleeping peacefully. Her nights changed quickly. The mind follows the picture it is given. The watchman does not allow the mind to rehearse the past or predict the future. Both rehearsals invite fear. The present moment is the watchman's domain. Night is not the hour for review or planning. It is the hour for release. Planning belongs to the day. Release belongs to the night. Many fear that if they do not plan, they will forget. Yet forgetting fear is precisely the goal. Divine intelligence remembers what man does not need to carry. As peace becomes habitual, the identity of the listener shifts. One no longer identifies as anxious or vigilant. One becomes known as steady and dependable. Others notice this change. They say you seem untroubled, even in difficulty. This is not indifference. It is trust made visible. Trust creates authority. Authority calms others. People look to those who are not governed by fear. The watchman's discipline also prevents the return of old patterns. Fear often attempts to return in familiar forms. When these forms are recognized and dismissed, they lose power. Conscious awareness dissolves it. I have often said that peace must be practiced like any other art. One does not master music by wishing to play. One practices until harmony becomes natural. Peace is no different. Each night of practice deepens the habit. Each morning of calm confirms it. Eventually, the watchman's work becomes effortless. Peace stands guard naturally. Fear no longer attempts entry. This prepares the way for the final understanding that when peace is established as a habit, life itself begins to respond differently, and fear loses its place not only at night, but entirely. For the one who rests in trust by night, walks in confidence by day, and life answers accordingly. When peace has been practiced night after night, and fear has been gently but firmly denied its old authority, a quiet transformation takes place. Fear no longer needs to be fought, for it no longer presents itself as a command. It becomes a distant suggestion, easily dismissed, no longer persuasive. This is the natural outcome of alignment, not a personal victory. Many believe freedom from fear must be dramatic, that it must arrive with a sudden change of circumstances. Yet true freedom is quieter than that. It arrives as steadiness, as the absence of urgency, as the sense that nothing must be watched so closely anymore. The soul that has learned to rest at night begins to trust itself during the day. Confidence grows without effort. Decisions are made without strain. One no longer feels compelled to justify rest or defend peace. Peace becomes the rightful state. I have often observed that those who no longer carry fear are easily recognized. They speak less, yet their words carry weight. They move without haste, yet they arrive at the right time. They do not rush to explain themselves, yet they are understood. Life responds to this inner order faithfully. Fear once served as a false guide. It said, "Stay alert. Be prepared for harm. Do not relax." When peace replaces fear, guidance becomes clearer. Intuition speaks without interruption. One knows when to act and when to wait. This knowing removes anxiety about timing. Timing no longer feels threatening. One trusts that what must occur will occur at the appointed hour. This trust dissolves impatience and restores joy. The one who sleeps without fear awakens differently. The morning does not feel like a burden to be managed, but like a continuation of rest. Energy returns. Strength feels natural again. Others sense this change immediately. They feel calmer in your presence. They rely upon you more readily, not because you assert authority, but because you embody it. Authority flows from alignment. I have seen people whose lives were once governed by fear become pillars of calm simply through the nightly practice of release. Their circumstances did not change overnight, yet their experience of life did. And soon, outer conditions followed inner order. Fear cannot survive where peace is habitual. Habit is stronger than effort. When peace is practiced nightly, it becomes the default state. Fear finds no foothold. This is why Scripture speaks of rest as holy. Rest was never meant to be idleness. It was meant to be trust, expressed physically. To rest is to declare, "I am supported." That declaration carries power. When you no longer fear the night, you no longer fear tomorrow. Tomorrow loses its power to threaten. It becomes simply another day in which order unfolds. I have often said that the future belongs to those who are not afraid of it. Fear contracts vision. Peace expands it. Expansion allows opportunity to be seen and received. The one who rests well does not chase life. Life meets him. Opportunities appear without pursuit. Help arrives without anxiety. Solutions emerge without force. This is not because life has changed its nature, but because resistance has ended. Life has always responded this way. Fear simply obscured the response. You may notice that you no longer rehearse conversations or anticipate disasters. The mind no longer feels compelled to guard itself. This freedom is not careless. It is intelligent trust. Intelligent trust does not ignore difficulty. It places difficulty where it belongs under law, not under fear. When fear is gone, compassion increases. You become gentler with yourself and others. Judgment softens. Forgiveness becomes natural. The heart lightens. This lightness affects everything you touch. Work becomes easier. Relationships become calmer. Even strangers respond differently. Peace is contagious. The night now serves you instead of alarming you. It becomes a sanctuary rather than a test. Sleep restores rather than drains. And because the night has changed, the day must follow. Law is exact. What is impressed in rest is expressed in action. You may still encounter moments of uncertainty. This is natural, yet uncertainty no longer becomes fear. It becomes curiosity. Curiosity invites guidance rather than panic. I would remind you that fear was never meant to be managed. It was meant to be released. Management implies permanence. Release implies resolution. Each night you choose to release, you reaffirm trust. Each morning you awaken in peace, you confirm the law. This is how fear leaves permanently, not through one heroic act, but through steady obedience to truth. Say often, with simplicity and without emotion, I rest in peace. I am divinely protected. Let this be your final thought at night and your first thought in the morning. When peace governs both, fear has no place to return. And so I leave you here, not striving, not guarding, not rehearsing, but resting. Resting in the knowledge that nothing is required of you tonight except trust. Trust will stand watch. Sleep will restore. And fear, having lost its assignment, will quietly disappear. I would leave you now at the threshold of rest, not with something to do, but with something to remember. When truth has been received, it does not ask for labor, it asks for allowance. You have already done what was required by understanding. What remains is to let understanding take its place within you. Fear has never been your nature. It was an intruder, tolerated too long because it disguised itself as care. Yet care rooted in fear always exhausts, while care rooted in trust restores. You are learning now the difference, not through effort, but through experience. If you feel quieter than when you began, that quiet is not emptiness, it is order. Order feels still because nothing is out of place. When the soul is ordered, it does not hurry. It does not scan for danger. It does not brace itself against life. It rests. You may notice that your body already understands what your mind has only recently accepted. Shoulders lower, breath deepens, the pulse steadies. These are not accidents. They are signs that the burden has been laid down where it belongs. There is no virtue in remaining tense. Tension was never faith. It was fear trying to appear useful. Now that fear has been relieved of duty, usefulness returns in its proper form as clarity, strength, and quiet confidence. Nothing essential has been lost by releasing fear. Only strain has departed. And strain was never a requirement for safety, wisdom, or love. It was only habit. You may find, in the days ahead, that situations which once troubled you no longer demand your attention. They may still exist, but they no longer command you. This is not avoidance. It is authority restored. Authority does not shout. It does not justify itself. It does not rush to be believed. Authority stands, and life arranges itself around it. You may also notice that you are less inclined to explain yourself to others. This is natural. Explanation is often an attempt to manage perception. Trust releases that need. When you trust life, you trust that you are understood where it matters. Fear always demanded proof. Trust requires none. Trust knows before evidence appears. And because it knows, evidence follows. I have often observed that when people stop watching for signs of trouble, signs of good begin to appear. This is not because trouble was waiting to punish vigilance, but because attention has shifted. Law follows attention faithfully. You were never required to anticipate harm to deserve protection. Protection does not respond to fear. It responds to alignment. Alignment has now been restored. There is nothing more you must rehearse tonight. Tomorrow does not require preparation through anxiety. Tomorrow will meet you as you are rested, receptive, and guided. You are not irresponsible for resting. You are obedient to law. Divine intelligence does not require your exhaustion to operate on your behalf. If the mind attempts to return to old habits, do not argue with it. Argument energizes the very thing you wish to dissolve. Simply return to the knowing that responsibility has been transferred. That knowing is enough. Say inwardly, if needed, this is not mine to carry, and let that be the end of it. You may find that sleep comes more easily now, not because you forced it, but because nothing is standing guard anymore. Sleep comes when vigilance leaves. Even if sleep is slow to arrive, rest has already begun. Rest does not depend upon unconsciousness. It depends upon trust. The night does not ask you to solve anything. It asks you to surrender everything. Surrender, rightly understood, is not giving up. It is giving over to something wiser, stronger, and unfailing. You are not being watched by fear anymore. You are being held by order. I would remind you that divine intelligence does not work by alarm. It works by sequence, by timing, by precision. It knows when to move and when to wait. You are not required to supervise this process. If you wake during the night, do not return to vigilance. Return to release. Night waking is not failure. It is simply another opportunity to rest consciously. Say gently. Say nothing more. Words spoken without strain carry great power. You may notice that your dreams soften, or that you remember them less. This is often a sign that fear has withdrawn from the subconscious. The mind is no longer rehearsing danger. Even activity will feel less urgent, more precise. Precision replaces hurry. Clarity replaces worry. Presence replaces anticipation. Others may sense this change without knowing why. They may trust you more readily. They may feel calmer around you. This is not something you must cultivate. It is the natural effect of inner peace. Peace is never passive. It is profoundly active. It arranges without noise. It protects without force. It guides without pressure. Fear always asked, "What if?" Peace answers, "I am." That answer is sufficient. You are not meant to remember every detail of this teaching. Truth does not require memorization. It requires agreement. Agreement has already been made. From this night forward, fear no longer governs your rest. Rest governs your strength. Strength governs your day. And because the night has been reclaimed, the day must follow. Nothing stands between you and sleep now, except habit, and habit yields quickly when it is no longer believed. Lie down knowing this. Nothing is required of you tonight except to rest. You are safe. Let sleep take you gently, and let fear, having lost its purpose, fade quietly away. I would speak to you now as one who has nothing more to add, only something to leave behind. When truth has been given fully, it does not linger. It steps back. It allows the soul to settle into what it has already accepted. You are not meant to carry this teaching forward as a task. You are meant to rest into it as a state. Truth that must be remembered by effort has not yet been received. Truth that has been received requires no remembrance. It lives. If you feel a quiet finality now, Do not resist it. Finality does not mean something has ended. It means something has been placed. When a burden is laid down correctly, the hands remember how to remain empty. Fear once occupied those hands. It gave them something to hold, something to guard, something to rehearse. Now there is nothing left to grip. And in that emptiness, peace takes its rightful place. Peace does not announce itself. It does not insist that you notice it. It simply remains when fear is gone. It does not require constant reinforcement. It grows stronger through quiet consistency. You may notice that the urge to review, check, or anticipate feels weaker now. That is not because you have become careless. It is because you have become certain. Certainty does not revisit what has already been decided. The night no longer feels like a test to pass. It feels like a companion. Darkness no longer suggests danger. It suggests rest. This is how night was always meant to be known. Fear once borrowed its strength from imagination. Now imagination has been returned to its rightful work, preparing rest, not rehearsing harm. The images that come now are softer. Sometimes there are none at all. That is also peace. If thoughts appear, let them pass without interest. Interest feeds them. Indifference dissolves them. Peace does not chase thought away. It simply outlasts it. You are not required to watch yourself sleep. Sleep knows how to come when nothing blocks it. Let the body lead. The body remembers safety even when the mind forgets. You may awaken during the night and find that fear does not rush in as it once did. Instead, there may be a moment of stillness, almost unfamiliar. That stillness is not emptiness. It is protection felt. Do not fill it with thought. Let it hold you. Protection is never noisy. It does not startle you awake. It does not demand your attention. It simply remains, constant and untroubled. I have often observed that people who finally sleep without fear say, "Nothing changed, yet everything felt different." That is how law works. It rearranges quietly, without explanation. The mind always asks how. Law answers with now. The moment fear steps aside, protection steps in. There is no interval. You may find that you no longer feel the need to prepare yourself for the next day before sleeping. Preparation is for action. Night is for surrender. When night is used correctly, day prepares itself. If tomorrow brings questions, they will meet a rested mind. Rested minds see clearly. Clear sight replaces worry without effort. You are not being irresponsible by resting. You are being obedient to the highest law. Divine intelligence does not require your exhaustion to prove your devotion. Everything is being placed in better hands. The hands you once used to hold fear are now free. Free hands receive easily. You may notice that gratitude arises without being summoned. Gratitude is the natural response of one who no longer fears loss. When fear leaves, appreciation remains. This gratitude will shape your days gently. It will soften speech. It will steady movement. Others will feel it and respond without knowing why. Peace changes how you are perceived. People trust those who trust life. They feel safe around those who do not brace themselves against the world. It stands whether you acknowledge it or not. If at times old habits attempt to return, do not treat them as threats. Treat them as echoes. Echoes fade when not answered. Answer nothing. Rest answers everything. The night does not require courage. Courage belongs to struggle. Night requires trust. Trust is quieter, stronger, and more enduring. You were never meant to be strong through tension. You were meant to be strong through alignment. Alignment has now been restored. Let this be enough. There is no final instruction to remember. There is no ritual to repeat anxiously. There is only the quiet understanding that fear no longer serves a purpose here, and what has no purpose cannot remain. Lie down now without guarding the world. It does not require your watchfulness. You are held. You are protected. You are at rest. Let sleep close the day gently, and let peace remain.